This presentation is about Something Must Be Done About Prince Edward County, based on a family, a Virginia town, a civil rights battle. The author is Kristen Green. Something must be done about Prince Edward County. There are three themes that are found in this book: the effects of racism, the healing of racism in the community, the social change in the community. The thing that we're going to deal with is the effects of racism. Racism in America gets down back to the country's foundation. After the Emancipation was written, blacks and whites received diverse treatment when it came to dealing with the laws of racial segregation. When the decision was made by the court system in 1954 to desegregate the white schools and the black schools so that they could both receive equal education, so that the blacks could receive equal education, the white citizens of Prince Edward County were not in agreement with the court system. Once the Supreme Court made the ruling, some of the white leaders of Prince Edward County decided to build their own school for their children to attend so that their children would not have to go to school with the blacks. The Supreme Court ruling divided the surrounding counties within the state of Virginia. During the integration process, some black students did not receive any education at all. This effect resulted in the illiteracy within the black community of Prince Edward County. During this time of desegregation, there were several consequences that the black family endured because of the closings of the school in the county. One was that the black families were being divided due to the closings of the school, and secondly, it was most of the blacks had to send their children to live with other relatives in and outside of the state, outside of the county and state. Some of the educational programs were run by Cottrell College in North Carolina, but most of the division that the black families endured were permanent. A great example of this was when Elise Lancaster, which was the maid for the Greens, when Elise had to send her daughter Gwen to a school in Massachusetts. Her daughter Gwen did not return to Farmville after being sent away to go to school. When the public schools began to reopen in 1967, there was still a racial split between the black and the white students. Most of the white students continued to attend Prince Edward Academy. The effect that racism had on Prince Edward County were very deeply rooted. For example, when Green interviewed Mr. Taylor, she noticed that his feelings never changed about black people and their children going to school with white children. This effect caused a lack of trust and disunity among the blacks until this very day. However, with the help of the state implementing different programs and mediation, healing is now taking place within the Farmville and surrounding counties. Second central ideal is dealing with the healing of racism in the community. Farmville and the surrounding areas were so deep in racism and injustice that the board of supervisors thought that if they were to in front put a plaque in front of the courthouse stating that the closing of the schools was wrong, it would make things better. However, it did not make things better. They were so wrong about that. According to Green, Joy Cavers, a member of the museum council officer, stated that she didn't think that that was enough. She quoted saying, "You can't just put a plaque out and then nobody talk to each other. You have to come together as a community. The question is, can anything ever be enough?" The question was posed, can anything ever be enough to heal the racism and injustices that Farmville and the surrounding communities were facing? The Motion Museum began to serve as a place of the communities to heal. The Motion Museum has served in the capacity of bringing together blacks and whites within the communities to unify them through the learning and sharing of the community's history. Through conducting a radio interview with a black student named Mickey Pride and a former teacher from Prince Edward Academy named Rebecca Butcher, these interviews were therapeutic. These interviews became therapeutic for Mickey because it helped her to see that she was still carrying anger about schools closing. Pride also saw that talking about her experiences could help with the healing of racism in the Farmville and surrounding communities. The last central ideal deals with social change in the community. When thinking about social change in a community, these things come to mind: tradition, history, prejudices, and community injustices. If the people within the communities are unwilling to work to change, are unwilling to work to change, then the roots of tradition, history, prejudice, and injustices will continue to grow deeper and deeper. In the book, The Birth of Green's Daughter causes us to remember that raising a new generation helps with fading out of the old routines and society behaviors to bring about change in the community. As time and years pass, there are new generations that come with new routines and social behaviors, which bring healing along with it. It has been known that time can heal past hurt, broken hearts, and wounds. For the residents of Farmville community, no one could ever have seen the routines of keeping the blacks out of the schools and being racially divided come to an end. For this community, time brought about societal change that Green's parents could have never imagined. For this community societal change that came with a new generation was exactly what the Farmville community needed to start the healing process and a to ignite hope in a hopeless community. This slide shows the effects of racism, the healing of racism within the community, the social change within the community. This section will deal with the general perspectives, an autobiography of my life, the grandparents prior to 1970, and the parents 1970s through the 80s. My life. My name is Veronica West. I was born in July 1978 in LaGrange, Georgia. My parents are Willie and Angela West. I have one brother, Christopher West. Um, as far as my school, I attended Southside Primary Elementary School, which I started there from kindergarten to the fourth grade. My fifth grade year, I completed at Dawson Street Elementary School. From that point on, I went to middle school. I attended middle school at Gardner Newman Middle School. It was there where I I continued to have integrated classes. I continued to take classes with white kids, and I have friends. I had white friends. I made friends with everybody. Pretty much, I was not a talker, but and I really wasn't per se to myself, but I was open enough to make friends. As far as my curricular activities, I joined the band. I love music. That's what I have grown to love throughout the years. So I joined band. I played the alto saxophone. My during my middle school years. In my middle school years, I really didn't have any encounters with any racial divide or racism. Everybody got along. Everybody, felt as if we were one big unit. So there were no problems during middle school. Once I left middle school and I started my high school years at LaGrange High. Um, Pretty much that's when I start seeing racial divides between the blacks and the whites. It was more prevalent in high school than any other time during my academic career. For the most parts, we would see the white kids being able to hang out in the school parking lot and not get in trouble or not be or anything not be said to them by the police. On the other hand, if we gathered, not even on the school parking lot, but maybe per se down at Granger Park, there will always be instances where the police would come and like, okay, you guys can't be here. You got to, go somewhere else. So we I began to see that racial divide when I got to high school. However, the friendships still remained. Um, Even though they had their place to hang out, we had our place to hang out, we still remained friends. But it was always an unknown that we could not, it was a known that we could not cross that line to be with them in the parking lot. Um, During my high school years, I ran track and I participated in the Granger Marching Band, which was absolutely the best 4 years of my life. I enjoyed them thoroughly. Um, I also held down part-time jobs while I was in high school. At Kroger, I worked at Kroger during I think it was like my junior year, part of my junior year, and I worked at Winn-Dixie throughout the latter part of my senior year. Um, During my time working at Kroger, I only experienced racial one racial incident. It was the time where I was a cashier and I was checking out this older lady, white lady, and of course we've always been told that the customers are always right. So um, at this point, I checked her out, asked her, if she wanted her groceries in paper or plastic. And when I gave her her total, she didn't put the money in my hand. She kind of threw it at me. And I was kind of blown away at the time. I looked at her, and the only thing that I could hear was someone saying, well, the customer's always right. But in this point, in my mind, she wasn't right. She was actually wrong. But what could I have done about it? I couldn't have said anything about it. So that was my one racial encounter. As far as civics, I learned about different civic organizations and different different civic organizations and sororities, fraternities, Masons, the Greek life, if we would call it, Kiwanis Club. We had different types of clubs, different event clubs, but even though they were mildly expressed to me, I really didn't have a concern to be a part of it. So I just didn't worry about it. My whole goal was to finish high school, and that's what I did. Upon finishing high school, I attended LaGrange College, where I got my undergrad in business administration. I went to the University of Phoenix, and I received my master's in business administration. And I also completed um, 2 years at Grand Canyon University to receive my master's in education. During my college career, I have not experienced any racial tensions or any racial intent. All of my classmates I have gotten along with. I have enjoyed being in classes with all my classmates, the whites and the blacks. I am so grateful to have had that experience with them. Um, Religion, religion. My family was a family that was deeply rooted into church and deeply rooted in at least with God. We attended a church called Faith Temple Church of Deliverance. This was a non-denominational church. Um, Pretty much we spent majority of our time there. We had Sunday services, we had Monday night prayer, we had Wednesday night Bible study, and then on Saturdays we had choir rehearsals. So pretty much my span of time was pretty much spent there. Um, it was there where I first saw an interracial marriage. There was a church that came to visit our church, and the pastor was white, and he had an all black congregation, which was interesting within itself again. And his wife was black, and I had never seen an interracial marriage before. That was like my first time, and pretty much I thought it was pretty interesting to me because I had never seen that before. But my mama told me, because I had asked her, I was like, but why is he married? Why is the white man married to this black woman? And my mama said, you love who you love, and there's nothing you can do about it. But at the end of the day, she said, we look at it this way: we all serve one God, and God is not a respecter of person. And she said, you could be red, yellow, black, blue, purple, orange. God still loves us all the same. And from that point on, it gave me a different outlook and a different view on life. The slide that we're going to explore is grandparents prior to 1970s. The person that I chose to interview, her name is Nadine Murphy. Nadine was born on July 1951 in LaGrange, Georgia. Her parents are the late Willie Seek and Emma Jean Truitt. Nadine is the first living child born to her mother and father. Attended For her education, Nadine attended Kelly Grammar Elementary School. Kelly Grammar Elementary School was an all-black elementary school. It was one of many black elementary schools here in Troup County, Georgia, or LaGrange, Georgia. Um, During this time, she stated that the blacks had their own elementary school and the whites had their own elementary school. And so Kelly Grammar was an elementary school that was actually located maybe like a block and a half, maybe 2 blocks down the street from where she lived. Kelly Grammar was the school was all black staff. You had black teachers, black custodian, black cafeteria workers, black principals. The whole staff and committee was black. Um, Kelly Grammar School, she told me that she didn't have any bad experiences with Kelly Grammar School. She went there from kindergarten all the way up until the 8th grade, or up until the ninth grade. I'm sorry, up until the ninth grade. Um, she stated that once she had graduated from Kelly Grammar, sometime later, um, during the desegregation of that, during Troup County's desegregation, um, their school, Kelly Grammar, was burned down by white people. And she stated that the white people burned Kelly Grammar down because they did not want their white kids attending a black school. So therefore, to keep their kids from attending that school, they decided to burn it down, which is almost parallel to what happened in Prince Edward County when desegregation happened there. The white leaders and citizens decided to act on their own will and build their own school, and the board shut the schools down. So it is very parallel. Whereas here you have Prince Edward County, they shut the schools down. LaGrange County, they burned the schools down. Once she left Kelly Grammar, she attended East Depot High. East Depot High was one of two black high schools, only one of two black high schools that was here in LaGrange. Um, it was an all black school, and pretty much that was the vibe in the city if you were on the side of town of Hamilton Road on back towards McGregor, Brown, Glenn Robinson, anything back towards that way, you were East Depot High. Anything towards the hospital way, and even possibly over by the stadium way, um, you were Kite High. And these two schools were rivalry schools. East Depot High mascot was they were the Wolverines. Kite High they were the Red Devils. Um, both had all-star basketball teams, track teams, and football teams. Both had dynamic bands. They would even have, as we call it now, battle of the bands. They would have battle of the bands between East Depot High Band and Kite High Band. Homecoming folks parades were immaculate. They had very, very, very awesome, beautiful homecoming parades. Um, it was come to find out when she told me that. I asked her, well, like, well, where did you all have your parades? And she said that their parades were held downtown on their homecomings. And I thought that was very interesting because it was forbidden to cross over the railroad tracks unless you had some type of business or either you worked across the railroad tracks into downtown. But the blacks were basically almost forbidden to come across the tracks to downtown. But she stated that whenever they had homecoming, they were allowed to come downtown to have their homecoming parade. I thought that was very, very, very interesting. All right. Her civic life and religion. Civic life, she was very involved with civic life, with the civil rights movement, and so forth. She felt that the civil rights movement was very important to her and to the black community, um, politically as well as physically happening, because whatever happened in the political arena, it surely affected them as a whole. When you had such political figures such as Medgar Evers that got shot in the driveway, that affected the black community across the nation. When you had Martin Luther King to get shot, that affected the black community across the nation. When John F. Kennedy was shot, it affected the black people tremendously across the nations. So when you had those type political figures to be shot and killed because what they stood for, because they stood for the rights of the black people, they stood for justice for the black people, they stood for what was right, they were killed. And that had a big effect on the blacks because they knew that, per se, who was going to fight for their rights if they had no leader. So civil rights was very big. It was very big for her. It was very, very, very big. She stated that was that was like one of the biggest things to drive, you know, to drive them. As far as far as also, she also stated, as far as civil rights movement, she stated that even though desegregation was in the process for the city, and there were still racial barriers to overcome, it was one thing that she noticed about the black community, that is one thing that the black community knew how to do, and that was to stick together. Um, this was like a great point in the book, basically, when the city leaders wanted to put up a plaque, stating their regrets for their actions that they did. But, Joy Carves comes back and say, hey, I don't think that's enough. You just put up a plaque just to save face, basically. And people still not gonna talk to each other just because you put up a plaque. But the main thing is that we gotta learn how to come together as a community, which means that the blacks and the whites have got to come together and learn how to talk about what's going on. Um, so my aunt stated that the family, um, as far as that, she said that you know we must come together as a community, which means the black and white must come together, yes, to heal. And that's the only way that the community is going to heal. That's the only way that the community is going to ever resolve any issues. Is that we become one, we become a unit, and we lay aside our color differences and our race differences. We become one. Um, my aunt also stated that the family was very religious. They knew of God, believed in God. They went to church. Pretty much she attended church with her mama, and her mom went to Arbor Grove Baptist Church, which is about three blocks up from where they live. And she still attends this church to this very day. Um, In the book, Something Must Be Done About Prince Edward County, speaks of how the white citizens and leaders attempt to overlook the problems of the black, thinking that the problems would disappear. But the problems did not disappear, they grew worse. The only thing that they could see, that they could think of, was making sure that their children had what was needed educational wise. And of course, this left the black families to provide and help themselves. I believe my aunt understood that even in her days of youth, that the blacks will never be seen as equal to the white men. She also believed that the white men would do whatever he can to keep the black people from succeeding in their education, and in life. However, I do believe that my aunt do know that there are some good people, some good white people that will still support black people. What my aunt has taught me through this interview is that she's taught me not to take people at face value, but to always look at them. It's always to look deeper into a person's heart to find good in them. The next slide that we're going to look at is parents 1970s through the 80s. The person I chose to interview, her name is Zelda Houston. Zelda was born on August 1965 in LaGrange, Georgia. Her parents are the late Willie C. and Emma Jean Truitt. Zelda was the last child born to her parents. Her education is as Zelda, she attended Kennedy Street School, which is about maybe 2.5 miles away from her home. She actually rode to school with her aunt because her aunt was a crossing guard there at the school. Um, During this time, Zelda, she went to school. When she started school, segregation had already taken place. So her first classroom setting was in a classroom setting with white kids. Um, she stated that as much as she can remember elementary school, that there was no racial problems, there was no racial divide. Everybody was very quartering, you need, yeah, I mean, everybody just bonding and glued together, She's like, nobody saw color, basically. Um, so she said she didn't experience the racial divide in elementary. As she attended the girls' junior high school from sixth to ninth grade. Um, she stated that she didn't see the racial divide. Everybody was still, the same. Everybody mixed and mingled. There was no separate, such as white or blacks. Everybody mingled together, um, the same. She even said when she went to high school, she said that there was no racial division or no racial tensions. Everybody got along. She said even in the classes where she was in a class with white students. She said nobody ever called her out her name. Were everybody were casual. Everybody, respected each other. There was a certain mutual respect. Um, I asked her if she ever saw any racial division. She said she never saw any racial divisions. She said not to say that there were some, there probably was some, but she said that she never saw any during her time at the high school. Her civic life and religion life, as part of the Cultural LaGrange Civic, Troup was known. Troup had a total people of 44,000 people during the 70s, which of course today it is much more. They're much more. The total of 44,000 is totally higher than that. Um, but LaGrange was also known as being a textile industry. One of the first textile industries that we know of as today is um, Callaway. The Callaway, it was called Callaway Textile or Callaway Mills. That was the very first textile mill, or one of the first textile mills here in Troup County. And it was Callaway Mills for a very long time until um, I think there may have been a deal made with Mr. Milliken, and Mr. Milliken took it over, and then he renamed it Milliken. Um, Again, those racial divide lines were still there in the 70s, but a little bit less restrictive. At that point, blacks were crossing over the railroad tracks to go downtown. Um, like I said, the restrictions was less. Blacks were able to enter into downtown to go to the banks and to do other businesses that they may have had, in town at the time. As far as religion, she attended Upper Grove Baptist Church, which was her mom's home church, and occasionally attended Thruto Grove Baptist Church, which was her dad's home church. Um, she said during the course of her life, um, she never had an experience with any type of racial hate or racial divide. She said everyone that she knew was horrible. Um, she stated she never saw, at the time she was going to church, she never saw any whites attend her church. She stated that the only time that she would see a white person it would be in passing or at school or when the insurance man came by the house to collect the insurance money on the policy. Hear my aunt talk about these things made me think about um, the book, what the author Kristen Green said, Green's life, and how the only black people that she truly was exposed to during her childhood were Elsie and her daughter. And also in the book, Green did not get exposed to different cultures and ethnic races until she went off to college. Um, and basically, it wasn't until Green went to Mary Washington College that she began to connect with different people or of different cultures and races. And the parallel with this is that my aunt was never exposed to any white people until she entered the public school and attended college. So in conclusion, after interviewing the two people from my different generation besides my generation, there were some similarities between the two generations as it connected to the black people on being on one side and the whites on the other side of town. Both stated that there were train tracks that divided the city and the county, and blacks and whites. It was also a known fact that no one crossed those tracks unless it was for work or just passing through to get to the other side. Most southern states had railroad tracks that divided the cities from the county, and it was no different for the LaGrange Troup County. LaGrange was heavily influenced by white leaders whose aim was to continue to control the city and the county. And these leaders would try to keep the status quo of what was not said is understood. However, I do believe that time does heal, and with new generation comes change. I believe that although I and my aunt have had different interactions with different races and cultures, have we still have accepting and open we still have accepting and open minds towards people. I truly believe that I and my aunts are not racially biased, but we have a genuine love for all. And as I'm reflecting on Prince Edward County, the white people were so adamant about putting money into their own children's schools that they intentionally overlooked the black children and their families, causing them to support and provide for themselves. Here's a great example. Education vouchers, which allows parents to choose what school they want their child to attend. If the government approves such a plan, then we would see segregation again. Another example is the school zones. I believe it or not, but every few years a rezoning happens here in Troup County. I watch these rezoning, and they are sending a majority of the black schools to Callaway and to Troup zones. We are headed in a direction of segregation once again. I believe that we as a people need to stand together and fight for racial and social equality in our state, country, and community. Thank you for listening to my presentation.